Sound sounded like before I changed this. Okay, so Zok Tehil Gemara. So yesterday we learned. Yesterday we learned that someone who was Teveich Umoicher on Shabbos, the Gemara quoted a brisa that said, "Ganav v'tovach b'Shabbos is mishalem tashlumei above v'chamisha dever meir v'chachamim oimim poitrim." So the question is, why is it that where Meir holds your chayiv, why don't you say kamle b'derabbanei? So the Gemara said that it's speaking b'tevech al yidei acher. He didn't shecht it himself; he had someone else shecht it. So therefore, there is no chiyav misa for him. So the Gemara asked if there's a shliach here and he didn't do it, and that's why there's no chiyav misa. Well, then why does he have to pay daled v'hei? He didn't do it. So to Gemara, we have a special pasuk that says that even though normally ain't shliach l'dvar aveira, but we had three different lamudim to tell us that by tvicha and mechira it works even through a shliach. Either because it's compared to mechira, just like the transaction of mechira is never done alone; it's always done with somebody else. Thank you very much. So too, tvicha al yidei acher would also be mechayv dalvei, or it was an extra word oy, the rabbi says shliach. Or it was the word tachas, the rabbi says a shliach. But whatever the case is, we have a raya that a shliach will be mechayiv you with dalei. So Zog to Gemara, Maska Flo Marzutra. So Marzutra had a kasha. Mi kamidi, the ilu obar iu loy mechayiv. If this person himself, the guy of himself, if he would have done the tvicha, he would not have been chayiv, because there would have been kam le b'derabim in it. V'avat shliach u'mechayiv. Yet, if a shliach does the same action that wouldn't be mechayiv him, if the shliach did it for him, the shliach would be chayiv. How is that possible? Zok Gemara, because be'etzem he is chayiv. Be'etzem his ma'aseh is mechayiv. But there's a special p'tur. It's an external p'tur of kamei b'derabim. Iu lav mishum deloy mechayiv. If he did the tvicha himself on Shabbos, avada he's mechayiv the moment. But there's an external p'tur. Elamishum de kamlei b'derabim minei, but b'tevech. Okay, period. However, but there is no problem of kamlei b'derabim minei if somebody else did the tvicha, because he wasn't over Isur Shabbos. Zog to Gemara, b'tevech al yidei acher. If it's speaking where somebody else shechted it, well then there is no chiyav misa. So then my temayu the Rabbanan the patri in this very same brayta, the Rabbanan argue on Rav Meir. And in fact, they hold that he's part from Baal Vei. Why should he be part from Baal Vei if he didn't have a Chiyav Misa at the time? Because he wasn't the one who shechted it. Zok to Gemara, Man Chachamim, who are the Chachamim who say it's Potter? And just to add, it's not Potter because of Kamei B'derabim, it's Potter because the Shechita itself wasn't a good Shechita. So in order to be Muchayiv Dal Vei, you have to be Tovcha, it has to be a good Shechita. This is not a good Shechita. Why is it not a good shchita? So to Gemara, the Amar, according to Reb Shimon, the Amar shchita she'eni reuya loishma shchita. This shchita is not matter the meat to be eaten, and we'll soon see why. But this shchita will not be matter the meat to be eaten. Therefore, it's called a shchita she'eni reuya. We don't consider that a shchita. So why is he not chayiv and dal v'hei? Because it's not a proper shchita. So to Gemara, there's three cases in our brayso that we need to worry about. There's the case of shachat b'Shabbos. There's the case of shachat l'avodah zarah, and there's the case of shachat shorniska. So let's think about this. Ha'teinach avodah kacha. I understand that he shechted it for avodah zarah, or and it's also to eat. Zivche mesim, if you shechted it for avodah zarah, the meat's also. Or b'shorniska. We know that the shorniska is also banal. So the shechita that you do doesn't impact the meat; it doesn't kasher the meat to eat. El shechita Shabbos, shechita rui. But if you shecht something on Shabbos, even though there's an Isur Shabbos to do the shechita, that doesn't make it that the meat shouldn't be edible. So the shechita will be a good shechita. So it goes back to the original question: why is it, according to the Rabbanon, that there's no dalad v'hei for someone who shechted on Shabbos? Where do we know that if you shecht on Shabbos, the shechita works? Titnan hashoichet b'Shabbos. If someone shechted on Shabbos, or if someone shechted on Yom Kippurim, Even though that shechita triggered a chiyuv misa, whether it's a chiyuv of misa b'dei adam if he shechted on Shabbos, or a chiyuv of chorus of misa b'dei shemayim if he shechted on Yom Tov, he was mischayev in avshoy. Nevertheless, shechita ksheira. Zok the Gemara, yeah, that's correct. There is such a Tana, but the Tana of our Mishnah will hold like Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, who hold that if someone shechted on Shabbos, in fact, it will be ushered. Our Tana holds like Rabbi Yochanan Sandler that shechita b'Shabbos is ushered. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, hamavashal b'Shabbos. So we're not bringing a right from shechita, we're bringing a right from mavashal. Hamavashal b'Shabbos. If one cooked on Shabbos, b'shogi, but it was b'shogi, so the halach is yoichal. What does that mean, yoichal? So Rashi, afilu boy b'yoy, which means even the person who was machal Shabbos b'shogi can eat what he prepared. B'mezid, but if someone was b'mezid over and cooked on Shabbos, that lo yoichal can eat. Rashi says, hula oilam, he may never eat this meat or whatever it is that he cooked. Aval acherim yusur elam oichlun. But other Jews are allowed to eat it. So clearly, even though he shechted or he cooked on Shabbos, it's still considered a good shechita because it's roy lachila. It can still be eaten because even though he can't eat it, but it's edible by other eaters. That's the Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, b'shogig yoichal l'motoy Shabbos. B'shogig, he's not allowed to eat it by b'yoyim, like Reb Meir said. Rather, he's only allowed to eat it motoy Shabbos. B'mezid, and it was b'mezid lo yochel elamis. He may never eat it, but others are allowed to eat it. So Rabbi Yehuda also holds that the malacha on Shabbos doesn't aser it, and it's still edible. However, Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, he's very machmir. Rabbi Yochanan Sandler Omer, b'shoigig yochel l'motzoi Shabbos lacherem v'loy loy. If he cooked on Shabbos b'shoigig, he's never allowed to eat it. Others are allowed to eat it Matzah Shabbos. And the mezid lo yochel elamis loy loy v'loy lacher. And if he cooked the mezid on Shabbos, it's usher. It's never edible by eat, but it is mutar b'no. It's allowed to be sold to a good. So by the same token, if someone shechted on Shabbos, according to Yochanan Sandler, it would be usher for everyone to eat. So therefore, it's a shechita she'einu ruya. And the Tana also holds like Reb Shimon that a shechita she'einu ruya is lab shemei shechita, and therefore he's parted from dal dahi. So this also leads to a very big shaila that the Achronim discuss is companies, Jewish companies that prepare food on Shabbos if you're allowed to use that food, because according to Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, it's usher for everybody. So there's a lot of discussion about it. There's also a discussion of what type of malacha on Shabbos have to be done with it. For instance, if you shechted it or if you cooked it, well, that makes a real impact onto the food. It changes the status of the food. But what if it was packaged on Shabbos? What if there's things that are done to the food that don't impact the food? Would that also have this problem? So that's one of the things that the Achronim discuss. The other discussion is Ma'aseh Shabbos, if you're allowed to use. In fact, a Jewish company that prepares food on Shabbos, most people will hold you wouldn't be allowed to use it. Because of this, Rav Nechunya ben Akana. However, the Pri Megadim paskins that first of all, there's a shaila if this applies to a malacha d'Rabbanan or only to a malacha d'Oraisa. There are those who hold that it even applies to a malacha d'Rabbanan, which means if someone was over a malacha d'Rabbanan, that food becomes usher forever. However, the Pri Megadim says if there's even one shita who is matir, even though we don't paskin like that shita, but if there's a shita who is matir, this malacha or whatever is being done on Shabbos, even though we don't paskin like it, then we wouldn't say that it's asur lomus. So that's probably one of that term that they must rely on a lot for certain food preparation. Zok the Gemara, my timer, Rabbi Yochanan Sandler. Where did Rabbi Yochanan Sandler get this huge chiddush from? That if someone is over a chiyuv Shabbos, in the preparation of food that the food becomes asur lamas. Zok Gemara, he knows it k'dedarish Reb Chia a pischa devei nesiya. He knows it from the drasha that Reb Chia did by devei nesiya. It says in the pasuk, "Ushamartem es haShabbos ki kodesh yilachem." You should watch the Shabbos because it's holy to you, and we compare it to kochim, ma kodesh, just like kochim, karbonos, asur b'achila. You're not allowed to eat them. Af ma'aseh Shabbos, so too something that was done on Shabbos, asur and b'achila. Frankly, Gemara, if you're comparing it to kochim, then it should be asur b'ana as well. I ma kodesh asur b'ana, af ma'aseh Shabbos should be asur b'ana. And that's what the Gemara Talmud Lemer lachem. Just kodesh lachem Shabbos amal. So lachem yehei, meaning it's not completely removed from you, although there's an isra achila, but it's still yours, and therefore you could still benefit from it, like selling it. Yachal afilu b'shoigig. You might think that even if someone was over isra Shabbos in the preparation of food b'shoigig, it should also asur it. Talmud Lemer mechaleleh ma'shumas. The pasuk there says mechaleleh ma'shumas. Clearly, we're talking about the mezid amarti lach v'loy b'shoigig. This pasuk that says ki kodesh yilachem is referring to a violation of a mezid, not a violation of a shayk. So that is the makar of Rabbi Yochanan Sandler that Ma'aseh Shabbos is going to be us. Zok to Gemara, Tuliki ba Rabbi Acha v'Ravina. There's actually a machlokes between Rabbi Acha and Ravina. Chad Amar, one of the two says Ma'aseh Shabbos doiraisa. One of them say that Ma'aseh Shabbos is doiraisa. The Chad Amar and the other one says they're Rabbanan. Ma'aseh Shabbos is only the Rabbanan. So we have over here what seems to be a pasuk that supports Rabbi Yochanan Sandler. Yet we have here a machlokes if Rabbi Yochanan Sandler's halacha is deraisa or if it's the Rabbanan. Mandamu deraisa kedamora. If you learn that midaraisa Ma'aseh Shabbos is osir, that's exactly what we said. We showed from Sukkot ki kodesh yilachem. But mandamu derabanan, if you hold that it's only Ma'aseh Shabbos is only osir midarabanan, it's because Omer Kar Kodeshi. The pasuk says Shabbos is Kodesh. Ki Kodesh He Lachem. The day of Shabbos in itself is Kodesh. He Kodesh ve'ein Ma'aseh Kodesh. But it's Ma'aseh Maran Kodesh. So it's only midrabanan because you can't learn midaraisa from this pasuk that Ma'aseh Shabbos are going to be us. So Zok Gemara Ulaman Damar Durabanan. If you hold that Rabbi Yochanan Sandler's halacha that Ma'aseh Shabbos is only us midrabanan, which means me'ikradin, if someone shechted on Shabbos, that shchita is a good shchita, and it should be mechayiv someone with daled vehei. It's only midrabanan that it's not a good shchita. So we're back to the drawing board. What's the svara of the chachamim that hold that if you shechted on Shabbos, if you shliach shechted on Shabbos, you're going to be chayiv, you're going to be potter from daled vehei? Why should you be potter from daled vehei? It's a perfectly good shchita. The Gemara wanted to say earlier that we're going according to Reb Shimon, and that Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler holds that this is not a shchita ru'uya. But now that we're saying that even Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler agrees that midaraisa is a good shchita, well then, why wouldn't this shchita invoke a chiyuv of daled vehei? Why is there no chiyuv daled vehei for this shchita that was done on Shabbos? Dr. Gemara, in fact, when the Rabbanon say that you're part from Dal Bay, they're not referring to Teveach b'Shabbos. There were three cases that we discussed in the Brisa. There was Teveach on Shabbos, there's Teveach La'avodah Zarah, and there was Teveach Shor HaNiskal. So the Gemara wants to say now that the Rabbanon who argue on the Meir and hold that there's no Dal Bay, he's not talking about Shabbos. In fact, the Shechita on Shabbos would make a chiv of Dal Bay. But if one shechted La'avodah Zarah, that's for sure shchita sheneruya. That means doiraisa it's aser. That's where the Rabbanon say that there will be no chiyuv daled vehei. So tevech la'avodas gechavim. Even so, frank the Gemara, but that doesn't help me. You want to tell me if you shech la'avodas zarah, it's aser b'ana, and therefore you're part from daled vehei. That's not true, because if you analyze under a slow motion photography, if you look at the videotape, you play it back slowly, you'll in fact see that there shouldn't be an issur. Why? Even the shachet beporta itzale. The moment you cut the neck even a little bit, that's enough to create an issur of avodah zarah. Idich, the rest of the shchita, once it's asher b'hana, once someone just slit the neck before he even cut the simanim and completed the shchita, it's already asher b'hana, meaning it's already out of the original owner's domain. So therefore, kika tavach lav d'mareka tavach. So the end of the shchita was no longer the animals of the nigzal. So there should be no chiyuv dal v'hei. So Rashi, lav d'mareka tavach. So it became also the moment you just broke the skin. It's not just breaking the skin; it's a tvicha, which means the ad gemar shchita loy mechayev. Until the gemar shchita, until roiv two simonim are shechted, it's not called tvicha. You haven't violated tvicha yet. Umakame demate gemar shchita, but even before the shchita was completed, itzir abana abela. This animal already became asher ba'ana to the original owner because it became the krubas avodah zarah, or shchitas avodah zarah. Umahi shaita afsidomine. From that moment that it became asher ba'ana, it's completely lost from the Bible. The isa, because even if it was here, you wouldn't be able to give it back because it's asher ba'ana, v'lav d'mareu. So if that's the case, once again, the tficha was not done on an animal that belongs to the nigzal, and therefore there should be no chiyuv. Amarava Zakrava, it's speaking when you have a lomdisha even of a desire. He said, he spoke out, I don't have kavana to do the Isra of a desire when I just break the skin of the animal. I only want to do a desire when I'm being mashlim the Raiv Shnei Simonim, which is exactly at the same time that the tvicha happens. So therefore, they both happen at the same time, and therefore, it's considered a tvicha. And the only reason why there's no chiyuv dal v'hei is because it's aser bana. Dr. Gemara, shara nisko. So let's go back to the shara nisko. I'm sorry, because it's aser bana and it's a shchita sheneruya. I have to add that in. Shara nisko. A shara nisko meaning this shar killed somebody. And they bet and paskin on it that the shar has to be destroyed. So it's asher bana. The sheet of Rabbeinu Tam is that it's not asher bana until after it's killed. So that's not what we're going to discuss. Roy Rishonim learn that the shar nisko becomes asher the moment it's condemned by Bezdin. So it's an isra ana. So if it's an isra ana, lav didehu de katabach. He's not shechting the animal of the owner. So once again, there shouldn't be a chiyuv dal v'hei. So now we're turning back and asking a kasha on Reb Meir. How could you say that there's a chiyuv dal v'hei when you shecht a shar nisko? It's asher bana. So you're not even shechting the animal of the nigzal. Amar Rabba, Zokt Rabba, Hachav Amaya Askinon. This is not a regular shar nisko because in fact, if you had a fellow who owned a shar nisko and you stole it from him, and then you shechted it, you would not pay dal v'hei, like the Gemara says, lav didehu. But here we're speaking about a more complicated case. Kagoin shemashru l'soimer. The owner of the ox gave the ox over to a shomer. And at the shomer's house, the hizik b'vei shomer, in the shomer's responsibility, when the shomer was watching it, this ox did something that made it deserve to become a shar nisko. The nigmar dina b'vei shomer. And while the shomer was watching, this animal was taken to Bezdin, and Bezdin paskin that this is a shar nisko. And the ganev mibei shomer. The ganev never stole this animal directly from the owner; he stole it from the shomer. Now, really, he didn't do anything. But what is the halacha? If a shomer is watching an animal and it becomes a shar nisko, so basically, because of under his watch, this animal became worthless. The halacha is it's a machloikis if he could take that animal and return it back to the bailam and say, "Harei shel chalafanecha, this is your ox." So we're going to follow the shita that holds this. In fact, you could. You can take the ox, even though the ox is worthless, and this happened under the watch of the shomer. The shomer can give this ox back to the bailam and say, "I did a great job. Here's your ox," and he's potter to pay. So this ox, although it's useless and it has no value, it's asher bana. There's one person in the world who has a tremendous value out of this ox. That's the shomer himself. because if he can return it, he will not have to pay for it. So this ox although it's also banal, it has a great value to the shomer owner. For Reb Meir Savalak Reb Yaakov, Reb Meir over here, who holds as a chiv dal v'hei, holds like Reb Yaakov, who holds that if the shomer gives it back, the shomer is absolved; he doesn't have to pay. So to the shomer alone, this animal is very valuable. And the Savalak Reb Shimon, and he also holds like Reb Shimon. And we're going to see what Reb Shimon says in a second.
So this shore was mazik while it was in Rishus of the
shomer.
Then it got stolen.
Then the peasant passed it on it that it's a shor niskal, and it's also banal now. And then it got stolen.
And so
this fellow who stole it then shecht him.
Okay. And the shomer is responsible for
the ox.
Even
but if he gives it back as is, then he's not shechted. If he gave it back alive. If he gave it back alive, he could say and he would not have to pay anything.
Even though
he might have been responsible for it.
That is worthless.
Correct. Correct.
But what would he be responsible for to return if
after shomer?
What is the shomer responsible? The full value of
the full value, yeah.
Even though it's worthless.
Correct, because it's his fault that it's worthless. He didn't watch it. He was supposed to watch it. He didn't watch it properly, and that's why he got into trouble. Yes. Yeah. So Zakmar Savala Kreb Yaakov, he holds like Kreb Yaakov the Omar, Afmisha Nigmar Dinai. Even though Bezin already passed on this animal, that it's also bano, still the Chziri Shomer Labailo Muksa. If the Shomer gave it back, it's considered returned. He could say, "Here's your ox." Doesn't look any different than it looked when you gave it to me, and he's put. The Savala Kreb Shimon, and this Tana Reb Meir, who's saying that there's a chiyuv to pay kefil, also holds like Reb Shimon, who holds Dover Hagorim Lamam and Kamamadam.
If he's returning it after it's been gotten in a return initial, then it has no value. Why isn't he responsible for replacing the value?
Because he could say, I'm giving you back the ox that you gave me.
Which I wasn't showing her properly, and it's now worthless. It's
now worthless, but I'm still giving you back your animal.
What is exactly, so then why is he responsible after it's been checked?
Because he's not returning it anymore.
It's also worthless.
Yeah, but he's not returning what he got. So what Chaim is saying is something. There's a concept of hezek and nicker. There's definitely damage to it because it's worthless. But right, it's not nicker on the animal because it's an intrinsic thing. So as long as he can get that animal back, he's going to be okay.
Even though it's his responsibility to prevent it from being mounted.
Correct. So you're saying this is like getting off on a technicality. Seriously. He was, yeah. This is a very serious technicality. Indeed, it is. It's a very serious technicality. I would agree with that. So
Trump will be looking for this.
Okay. Now, according to Reb Yaakov, according to Reb Yaakov, although this ox is worthless, to the shomer, it has a lot of value. The Savalak Reb Shimon, Damar Davar Agorim Lamamin Kamamandami, and the holds like Reb Shimon, who holds that even though this is useless for etzim, but since it will cause me to have to pay a lot of money, to me it's like money. So therefore we consider it that it belongs to the shomer because it's to the shomer it's worth a lot of money. So Nachmal, the Shara Niskal, why does he pay? Why does, according to Reb Meir, why does he have to pay if he was Tabak Shara Niskal? Because to the shomer itself, it's a Dover Graham Lamam. So it's interesting. The same Ganem, had he stole this ox from the Bailim, he would be potter. But since he stole it from the shomer, he's chayiv. So it works two ways. The shomer got off easy, but the shomer is a win-win. The shomer gets off easy, but the shomer gets it even better. Not only doesn't he have to pay back the Bailim, the Ganem has to pay him. This is definitely an incentive to take on shmira assignments because you can hit it big. Okay. Zak to Gemara. Rabba Omar. Rabba says, rather, we're speaking, let's go back to our original kasha. Our original kasha was Teveach b'Shabbos. The Gemara wanted to know, Teveach b'Shabbos, is there not a tour of Kamlei b'Derabba Minei? Because when he's shechting, he's being over of Allah of Shabbos, he's becoming Mechuyev Misa. At that time, he's Mechuyev Mammon. So why is it that he's going to be Chayev? According to Reb Meir, so tomorrow he shechted himself. right? Until we wanted to say he gave it to a shliach to shech. Now we're saying he shechted himself. So he shechted himself. Why isn't there a kamei b'derabim? Okay? So up to Gemara, another new chiddush. Reb Meir loike u'mishalim islay. Although Reb Meir holds that loike u'mishalim, even though you get malchus, you still will pay. Nevertheless, meis u'mishalim lesly. Meis u'mishalim, he doesn't hold up. So we're still stuck because if meis u'mishalim lesly, you're still kamei b'derabim because he's still being killed. He's still mechuyev misa when he shechs his animal. So why is it that he's chayiv on the shechita? Is shiny hani the chidushu shechitze Torah b'knas. When it comes to kamei b'derabim, of course your mayor holds up kamei b'derabim, but that only works when the chiyav is a chiyav moment. If I damage you, so my ikra din, I'm mechuyev to pay back. But dalet v'hei, that's not damages. That's a chiyav knas that the Torah put on him. The chiyav knas will not be subject to the tour of kamei b'derabim. So why is it that he pays dal v'hei if he shechted the animal on Shabbos? It's because the chiyuv dal v'hei is a knas, and knas, to use a Victor's words, knas trumps kamei b'derabim. The chiddush is a chiddush Torah b'knas afal gav the miktel, even though a person becomes mechuyev misa with the shchita, mishalem, he still pays dal v'hei. So now we have a new twist. We've been learning about kamei b'derabim. If you say it only by chiyuv misas bezin, or if you say it by kares, or if you say it even by misas b'deshemayim, if you say it even by malchus, right? These are all the trials we had, and now we have a new twist. Do you say it by knas? Meir holds you don't say it by knas. Afal gav the miktel mishalim. V'oz the Rabba l'temei, because this pshat in Reb Meir is being said by Rabba. So Rabba was the one who said this chiddush halacha that Reb Meir holds that even though you say kamei b'derabim, but it doesn't apply to knas. To Amar Rabba, Rabba said, "Haya gedi ganav loy."
The whole knas is not. It's not a tishleim. So because if you see
the whole class is a chiddush,
you're not paying for what you did, so you can get it even by kamei b'derabim. Makes sense.
It's not. I'm paying because I did it, but I'm not. But it's not. It's not what you did that caused the chiyuv. It's the bezin that caused it. The Torah speaks a little bit about that on the Aleph. Okay, Zok Gemara, but also Rabba l'temei, and Rabba is going according to his own halacha. Dom Rabba, hayu gedi ganav loy. What happens if he had already stolen before Shabbos a gedi? The tav chay b'Shabbos, and he shechted it on Shabbos. Chayiv, he'll be chayiv dal v'hei. Why? Shekvar nischayiv b'gneva kodim shiyav iludei yisur Shabbos. So let's stop for a second. The chayiv dal v'hei, really, when someone shechts a bull or a cow, he has to pay 5 times the cow. But really, the knas is only 4 times. The 5th is the original. So it's really the original animal that he's paying back. There's the geneva, and maybe the 2nd is the kefil even. And you're only really adding another 3 for the tvicha mechira. So when we say he pays dal v'hei, it means a total of dal v'hei, including the keren and the kefil.
You only get when that's
Yeah.
Doesn't happen when you
Musk. So the problem here is what happens if he did the geneva on Shabbos in such a way where the geneva was a chiyuv misa as well, like we had a couple of days ago. He made the akira and he took it out. So there's a chiyuv misa for the geneva itself. There, everybody agrees that you don't pay dal v'hei because you're missing the first payment. Because there, the part that's not knas, you're going to have a problem with kamei b'derabim on. So Rabbi is saying dafka haya gedi ganav loy, dafka that he didn't steal the gedi on Shabbos. If he stole the gedi on Shabbos, then he's not going to be mechuyev the keren because of the kamei b'derabim. And once he doesn't pay one of the dal v'hei, he can't pay less than dal v'hei. It's either all or nothing. So Rabbi says dafka haya gedi ganav loy. If he already had stolen this gedi before Shabbos, so therefore there's a chiyuv keren, the tavchay b'Shabbos, and on Shabbos all that was added to the mix was the knas of dal v'hei. Then chayiv. Why? Shekvar nischayiv b'geneva kodim shiyavu l'day yisur Shabbos. Because on the keren he was already mechuyev before Shabbos. There was no kamalei b'derabim on the keren. But ganav v'tavach b'Shabbos. But if he stole it on Shabbos as well, now the keren is impacted by the kamalei b'derabim. Therefore, potter. Therefore, you'll be potter from the whole dal v'hei. Shem ein gneva ein tvicha ve'ein mechir. And Rashi quotes a Gemara that says, Daled v'hei amar rachmana v'lo gimel v'dalet. Don't say, okay, the keren party is potter on, because there's kamalei b'derabim. He stole it on Shabbos. But the kefel part, the Knas part, the Daled v'hei part, he should pay, because that's Knas. No, it doesn't work that way. You either pay Daled v'hei or you pay nothing at all. You don't just pay the Knas part, but you're going to be potter on the keren. V'amar Rabba, what happens if he had a gedi gun of loy? The tafchay b'machteres. Now the halach is above b'machteres. If someone is sneaking through to break into somebody's house, the halach is the homeowner is allowed to kill that person. Because if someone's sneaking in to somebody's house, we know that if he's caught, he will be happy to kill the homeowner to continue his robbery heist. Therefore, since he's a roidev, we're allowed to kill him. So what happens if he had already stolen the animal and was already mechuyev on the keren? But the tafchay b'machteres. But he was in a machteres. In other words, he was at a point where he could have been killed when he made the tvicha. There you'll be chai. Why? Because the keren didn't have a pure kamalei b'derabim. The question is only on the Knas, on the dalvei, that will not be impacted by a chiv misa. That will not be impacted by kamalei b'derabim. But ganav v'tavach b'machteres. But if the geneva also happened b'machteres, where he's now potter on the keren because of kamalei b'derabim, then he's potter from all of the dalvei. Once again, shem ein geneva ein tvicha ve'ein mechira. Before you ask me the question, I just want to theorize. So too, Reb Meir holds that there's a chiyuv dalvei here. Why? Because the geneva was done before Shabbos, and the tvicha was done on Shabbos. And even though the tvicha brings with it a chiyuv misa, since it's only a chiyuv of Knas, the chiyuv of Knas, you're mechuyev to pay, even though it was done at the same time as a chiyuv misa, because there's no din of kamalei b'derabim on the Knas. He was in the middle of breaking into somebody's house, and he picked out an animal that he stole yesterday with him, and he shechted it over there. You want to ask me why the Michigan would do that? That's a good question. That already I can't answer. Pavus the Michigan that Pink decided to do it there. You've been ingering. He was hungry and he wouldn't be tight.
Let's understand. See, he's in the Machteres because then, if the Balabus is going to kill him, he's going to be put.
That's right.
So
that's called Mechiv Misa.
So that he's in the state of Mechiv Misa. So when he's in the state of Mechiv Misa and he shechts, no?
He's potter. He would normally be potter from any tashlumin, but not from Knas.
So if let's say somebody is a boom of Machteres and is Machal Shabbos Shas Maaseh, he's putter because he's Mechiv Misa.
There's no moment here. Bob Machteres is Chiv Misa, Shabbos Chiv Misa. Where's the Yisr moment? Where is he doing something that would be Mechayiv him with moment? If while he was in the Machteres, he did something that would be Mechayiv him moment, yes, he would be potter. Sure. So let's say he was in the Machteres with his friend. They were doing a joint heist. And while he's there, he takes his friend's thing and he breaks his mazik, his friend's object. He put it from paying his friend because it's kamalei b'derabim. He's in the matzah of chiv misa. Okay, the Gemara is going to actually talk about it. So I'm going to Shricha. Rabbah told us about this kamalei b'derabim, both in the case where the chiv misa was the Isser Shabbos, as well as an example where the chiv misa was because he was in above machteres. But you know there's a massive difference between the chiv misa of Shabbos and the chiv misa of above machteres. Because the chiv misa of Shabbos, what happens after he does his avera? Is he still subject to a chiv misa? Of course. If the Eitan come and say that a year ago he was machal Shabbos, he'll be mechiv misa. But if a guy is out of the machteres, that's it. He's not chayiv misa anymore. It's only for those minutes that he's in the machteres. So it's a very temporary chiv misa.
Because if he goes into the house, he's still Mechiv Misa.
That's right. Utricha. Rabba needed to say his chiddush in both cases. The Hashmina on the Shabbos, if Rabba only told us that by Shabbos there's a din of Kamal with Rabba Nei, it's Mishum the Isur Oila, because the Isur of Shabbos is forever. Meaning once he's over this Aveir, no matter when Eidim come, they'll still be Mechayv. Al Machteres, the Isur Shohu, the Machteres, he's only temporary Mechiv Misa. Maybe that's not enough of a Chiv Misa to say Kamal with Rabba even on the Keren. Emaloi. The Yashmin Machteres, and if Rabba only told us that by the Machteres, there didn't come with Rabba Nei, Mishum the Machtartai, who he has Zui has Rasai. When someone is Bab Machteres, you don't have to warn him, get out or we're going to kill you. You can kill him unwarned. So that's a very severe Chiv Mitzah. That's why it would patter the Keren. Avol Shabbos the boy Asra, but Shabbos in order to trigger Chiv Mitzah, which would require Asra, Eimaloi, Zok the Gemara, Sricha, that's why Rabbi wanted to say is halacha in both cases. So the maskana of what we're learning here is that the reason why there's a chiyuv of Daled of Hay, according to Rav Meir, for Tvichu Mechira, the Zok Rabba, is because it's a Knas, and Knas is not subject to the Torah of Pam Levi Rabbi. So the Gemara is going to ask in a second. We'll get up to there and we'll see what the Gemara asks in a second. Amar Papa, Haisa Para Genuvaloi. What if he had already stolen the Parah before Shabbos? V'tavcha b'Shabbos, and he shechted it on Shabbos. So therefore, only the Chi of Knas is coming on Shabbos. Chayev, he's Chayev. Why? Shefar Nischayev b'Geneva Kodim Shiyavi le'Isur Shabbos, which is consistent with what we just learned from Rabbah.
All this is the limit of Rav, right?
Correct. That's what Rabbah said. Hoysa Parah she'ulaloi v'tavcha b'Shabbos. What if you had borrowed a Parah, which means you're mechuyev anointed, and you shechted it on Shabbos? Then you're going to be potter. Why? Because there's no din dal v'hei on a parah shula. If you shecht a parah that belonged to the bailam that you borrowed, you're mechuyev anointed. When you shecht it, that's when you're mechuyev moment. And of course, by a chiyev moment, there is a din of kam leba derabim.
Isn't when he shechted and he's mazik it, isn't that called Gnaiva? So doesn't the Gnaiva and the Tzvich come together?
Could be, but there's no chiyev dal v'hei. Because a shoyl is not a gana. Once a shoyl is mechuyev anointed, he will never be chayiv, kefil or dalad v'hei. Rashi brings down.
If he inflicts it,
Rashi says that. That's the halacha. Rashi that he's shachting the katabach law gozer law mimara. When he's shachting it, he's stealing it. Umisa umama in baim kachur. And the chiv misa and the chiv mammon come at the same time. And he says the gabi shoyl loy shayach loy kefil loy arba b'chamisha. He's chayiv b'keren no matter what, because he's mechuyev anointed. Afilu toitan is ganov. Then knas, you only say the knas of kefil and of tzvicha mechira. Elo oy beganev oy b'shem mechinim apoiter atzmoi b'toitan is ganov. So Amar Nigman. Okay, could be, but I don't want to get bogged down in that because I want to finish. So Zakhamar, what does it say? So what did the Papa say back there? Rabba asked Rabashi. Rav Papa, Para Asal Ashmin, I don't understand. Rabba said the same halacha. The only difference between Rav Papa's halacha and Rabba's halacha is Para Genuvaloi. What's the difference if it's a Gedi Genuvaloi, or Para? Amalei, Rav Papa Shula Asal Ashmin. In fact, the first case of Haisha Para Genuvaloi is not the real Chiddush. He's leading into the Chiddush when you said She'ulaloi. And the Chiddush is, Salkadait Chamin, I would have thought. Hoyov Amar Papa. The Balker Papa said, Mishas Meshicha Hu de Ischayev Leib B'Mizayna. Rav Papa holds that the moment you make Meshicha, you start pulling the animal into your rishus when you're borrowing an animal, you're mechuyev at that point in taking care of the animal. Hachanami, so to here, Mishas She'ela Ischayev B'Oinsei. Let's say that the chiyuv of the shoyl already came the moment he took it. Don't say the chiyuv comes now on Shabbos when he's shechting it. Say the chiyuv came when he first pulled it, because that's when his mechiv, and that was before Shabbos, and therefore should be mechuyev to pay. Kamash Malon, that no, we say that the chiyuv moment came at the time of the shechita, which is on Shabbos, and therefore we say come lay with the Rabbi Minei. Kamash Malon Rashi, the Cholkama de Isa, since If the animal was here, even though he's Mukhlivin Einstein, but if the animal is in existence, Hadr Be'ena, the shoyl can give it back to the owner. Therefore, Ahishadi the Katavachla Kagazala. We say that there's a new Mais Gzela occurring when he shechted it, and that's when the Chiyav Mammon is coming, and that Chiyav Mammon is potter because it was done together with an Isser Misa. Zog to Gemara Vayt. Kamashal. Amarab. Teniach Lahem Avihen Para She'ula. What if Yisoimim were left over by their father Para She'ula? Meaning, their father had borrowed an ox from somebody for a term. He borrowed it for a month. And the father dies. And now, these Yisoimim have this animal that their father borrowed. They're allowed to keep it for the term of the loan. They don't have to give it right back. In fact, they're allowed to continue using it because they have that contract. But Mesa, it's a win-win for them. Because Mesa, if it dies, normally a shoyl is chayiv nointzin. These Yisraelim, they have a right to use it, but if it dies, ain't chayiv nointzin. They're not mechuyev to pay. Why not, Dr. Rashi? The inu lav shoyalim ninu Allah. They never accepted upon themselves a chiyav shayla. Their father did. So therefore, they will not be mechuyev nointzin. What would happen if Kesubos and Shalavim, they didn't realize that this was borrowed? They actually thought that this was their father's animal. They decided they wanted to have a meal, and they shechted it and they eat it. We're not mechayev them to pay in full. All they have to do is pay what they would have paid for food. They wouldn't have spent big money to buy the most expensive meats if they would have known that this was not their father's. They would have just bought less expensive meat. So they only have to pay. Rashi says, "Kol zuzah chashvinin barbar danki." I believe that's 2/3 of its value. But what if their father left over property, which means property is mishubid to the creditors of the father? Then chayavin l'shalem, then they would have to pay. So this last comment, what exactly is it referring to? There are those who learn that it's going on the first case. If their father left them over a parashula, they're allowed to use it, and if it dies, they're not chayiv. However, if their father left over nechasim, he left over karkois, those karkois would be meshubed to pay for the chiyav she'ela that the father took on. So let's think about it. If the chiyav she'ela is mechayiv him as soon as he takes it, well then his karkois are meshubed as soon as he takes it. However, if you learn, like Rav Papa, that the chiyav she'ela does not create a chiyav moment, because he can give it back, and only when the animal dies or when he shechts it will there be a chiyav, well then the properties would not be meshubed because that occurred after the death of the father. So ikad masla reisha, meaning it would not be consistent with Rav Papa, because this, by saying that it's referring to the reisha, it's saying that the karkois were already meshubed to pay back the owner of the animal from the time that the father took the she'ela, even before the animal died. The ikad masla seifa. But there are those who say that this is only referring to the seifa, meaning if they shechted and ate the animal and their father had karkois nechasim, then it would be meshubed. And that would be consistent with Rav Papa. So man the masla reisha, if you learn that they would be mechuyev to pay in full if they were nechasim, even if it was nanas, kol shekei na seifa, then surely in the seifa where they actually ate the animal, they would be mechuyev, and that would be uplika to Rav Papa. That would argue with Rav Papa, because according to Rav Papa, there was no chiyav moment, there was no chayiv yet at the time of the she'ela, and therefore the karka, even though there was karka there, it shouldn't pay for the animal if it was an oitis. The masla seifa. But if you learn that only in the seifa where they ate the animal would they be mechuyev to pay full price if the father's karkois were there, but on the reisha there would be no chiyav oinsin, even if there were karkois. Behind the Rav Papa, that would be consistent with Rav Papa.
What if they checked it and the father?
I'll get to that. Let me just finish to the bottom of the daf and I'll go back there. I'll get into the details of that. So Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan, Loyam Rish Lakish. Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan didn't want to say like Rish Lakish. What did Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan said that our Mishnah in Kesubos that says that you pay Knas is the loy asher because there's no malchus. Rish Lakish said that it's loikum mashalim. Why did Rabbi Yochanan not say like Rish Lakish? Because he wanted to learn that it's not going to come to a mayor who holds loikum mashalim. It's going to come to a Rabban who holds ain't loikum mashalim. And Rish Lakish, my time, why didn't Rish Lakish say like Rabbi Yochanan that it's speaking lo yasrbe, and then you don't have to say that our mission is going according to the sheet of a mayor who holds loikum mashalim. We have now it's 6:49. This gets into a whole new sugya of Chayv and Misha Shoygin, but we'll just learn it and we won't go into it. We'll start again here tomorrow anyway. Even the Ilu Asher Bei Potter, Rabbi Shlakish holds that since if there would have been a hasra on the Isser of the Chi of Koretz of a Choisai, there would not have been a din of Knas. Ki lo Asher Bei Nami, even if there was no hasra, and therefore there'll be no Chiv. Nevertheless, there'll be no Chiv Malchus. That is, nevertheless, it's going to be Potter. Okay, we'll stop here, and that gets us into the whole sugya of Chayv and Misha Shoygin. What happens if the very that you did was a Chiv Misa, but you're not going to be Mechiv Misa for this because there was no Asra? Would that also pat you as coming with the Rabbim? There's a lot of loveness about it. One of the svaras that say is a pshat, a Maisa that's Mechiv you Misa, that Maisa you're not going to be Chayv Mammon on? Is that pshat? Or if pshat is or bad to him, you are mechuyev. But the oynish, the more severe oynish is what patters you from the smaller oynish.
In case of my parents, you don't need a straw there. That's why that case is fraud. You don't need a straw.
But there he'll still be mechuyev.
Right. That's a unique case. Everywhere else you need no straw.
Well, that would be in fact according to Rabbi Yochanan. According to Shlokish, she has this huge chiddush that Chayv and Misha Shoygin. Meaning it's technically a chiv misa or chiv malchus or anything that would normally create common with rabbin, but because of a technicality, I'm not getting that oynish because there was no asra. There will still be common with rabbin. That's called double dipping. Okay, so you're asking me what the difference? Because when they so the first question is there a chiv moment that's triggered upon the she'ela itself, right? So Rav Papa holds there is no chiyuv moment triggered by the she'ela. Therefore, my karkois won't be mishomed at the she'ela when the oid didn't happen then. So that's Rav Papa. Now, let's say you hold that there is no chiyuv moment triggered by the she'ela, but once the animal is no longer here, then there will be a chiyuv moment triggered.
Don't get that chiyuv, right?
That's correct. That's correct. So therefore, take away nechosim. The Yosymim don't get that chiyuv. So therefore, they never have to pay for the animal, but they were in a henna. They have to pay what they were in a henna. They were in a henna. The may basar b'zayil, they have to pay what they're in a henna. But if the chosim were there, so then when the animal is damaged, so then the chosim would take on that shiva. So they would have to pay full price.